I still remember the moment I first saw it. The Craftsman house on Oak Street with its wide front porch and original leaded glass windows. The moment I walked through that door, I knew this wasn't just a house hunting appointment. This was destiny. 5 years of overtime shifts, canceled vacations, and ramen noodle dinners had led me to this moment. I was finally going to have a home of my own. At least, that's what I thought. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you how my family betrayed me and how a real estate agent's phone call changed everything, let me introduce myself properly. And before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Emma Davis, 30 years old and born with sawdust. In my veins, according to my grandfather. While other kids played with dolls, I was the 8-year-old following him around with a tiny toolbox, learning how to restore antique furniture and bring neglected spaces back to life. By high school, I'd refinished every piece of wooden furniture in our house. In college, I studied architectural preservation while working part-time for a home renovation company. When I graduated, I turned down a corporate design job in Chicago to stay in Lakeside, Michigan. My hometown nestled against sparkling blue waters and filled with historic homes begging for someone who understood their worth. I started my own, small restoration business, specializing in preserving the character of century-old houses while making them livable for modern families. It wasn't glamorous. Most days found me covered in plaster dust, hands calloused and nails perpetually stained with wood stain or paint. But I loved it. Every creaking floorboard and hidden pocket door. I loved coaxing beauty from forgotten places, revealing history layer by layer. What I didn't love was still living in my parents' basement at 25. Between student loans and business startup costs, buying my own place seemed like a distant dream. But I created a plan, a 5-year roadmap to home ownership that required sacrifice and discipline. I worked 7 days a week, taking on side projects, designing built-ins and custom furniture. I made my coffee at home, skipped vacations, and tracked every dollar. My social life dwindled to occasional meetups with my best friend Sophia at the cheapest coffee shop in town. My younger sister Olivia couldn't understand it. "You're wasting your 20s, she'd say, scrolling through photos of her latest weekend getaway while I calculated my monthly savings. "Life is for living, Emma." Maybe she was right. While I scrimped and saved, Olivia traveled, changed jobs whenever she felt restless, and lived in a nice apartment downtown that our parents helped her afford. They'd always been more protective of Olivia, stepping in to smooth her path while encouraging my independence. "You're the responsible one," Mom would say, as if that explained everything. By my 30th birthday, I'd done it. $60,000 saved for a down payment, an excellent credit score, and pre-approval for a mortgage. I was ready. The Lakeside housing market was competitive, with properties near the water especially sought after. I spent months getting outbid, watching homes slip through my fingers despite offering over asking price. Then Michael Wilson, my real estate agent, called with news that made my heart race. "Emma, there's a Craftsman on Oak Street about to be listed. The owners are relocating for work and need a quick sale. If we see it today, we could make an offer before it officially hits the market." 2 hours later, I stood in the entryway of 247 Oak Street, staring at original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves flanking a stone fireplace, and a bay window overlooking a garden that needed love but had good bones. The kitchen needed updating, and the bathroom was straight out of 1975, but the house was structurally sound, with all the character I'd dreamed of. "This is it," I whispered, already mentally planning where my grandfather's restored dining table would go, how I'd bring the kitchen back to its craftsman roots while adding modern functionality. "This is my home." Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Let's make it happen." We offered slightly above asking price with a fast closing timeline. The sellers accepted within hours. I floated through the inspection, the mortgage paperwork, the endless forms and requirements. Nothing could dampen my joy. Not the unexpected plumbing issue that needed addressing or the additional insurance costs for the original features. 2 weeks before closing, I invited my family to see the house. Dad examined the foundation with approval. Mom envisioned Christmas gatherings in the dining room, and Olivia wandered through the rooms with an expression I couldn't quite read. "It's very... you," she finally said. "All this old wood and built-ins. Personally, I'd gut it and go modern, but I guess it suits your whole vintage aesthetic." I laughed it off. The house wasn't to her taste, but it was perfect for me. That night, we celebrated at my parents' home, with champagne and my mother's pot roast. "To Emma," Dad toasted, proving that hard work and patience still pay off. Mom dabbed at her eyes. "We're so proud of you, honey." It was one of those perfect family moments that seemed to glow in memory. If I'd known it was the calm before the storm, maybe I would have savored it more. 3 days before closing, I got a call from the mortgage company. There was a problem with my loan, a discrepancy in my application that needed immediate attention. I rushed to their office, confident it was a minor clerical error. It wasn't minor. Someone had accessed my financial information and made changes that triggered a fraud alert. My loan was frozen pending investigation. The closing would be delayed, possibly canceled. "This doesn't make sense," I told the loan officer, panic rising in my throat. "I haven't changed anything. Everything I submitted was accurate." "I'm sorry, Ms. Davis. We have strict protocols for potential fraud. It will take at least 2 weeks to investigate and reprocess your application, assuming everything checks out." 2 weeks. The sellers wanted to close in 3 days. They needed the money for their own relocation. They wouldn't wait. I called Michael immediately, my voice breaking as I explained the situation. He promised to talk to the sellers, see if they'd grant an extension. Then I called my parents, hoping they might have a suggestion or even offer a temporary loan to bridge the gap. "Actually," Dad said after an uncomfortable pause, "come over tonight. We need to talk about something." The knot in my stomach tightened as I drove to my childhood home. Something was wrong, more wrong than I already knew. When I arrived, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table with Olivia. "Sweetheart," Mom began, her voice gentle in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. "There's been a change of plans with the house." Dad cleared his throat. "Olivia has decided she wants to settle down, put down roots here in Lakeside. When she heard about your loan troubles, well, she offered to buy the house instead. Since she's been saving too, and we've been helping her, she can make a cash offer." The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the table. "You're joking," I whispered. "Tell me this is a sick joke." Olivia leaned forward, all sympathy and wide eyes. "Em, I know you love that house, but it just makes more sense this way. The sellers won't have to wait. The real estate agent still gets his commission. Everyone wins." "Everyone except me," I said, my voice hollow. "You'll find another house," Mom assured me, patting my hand. "Maybe something less expensive, with fewer maintenance issues. This might be a blessing in disguise." I pulled my hand away. "Did you do this? Did you mess with my loan application to create this opportunity?" Dad looked genuinely shocked. "Of course not. That's a serious accusation, Emma. The loan problem is unfortunate timing, but Olivia making an offer is just practical problem solving." "We helped her with the money," Mom admitted. "We were going to surprise you with some help too after you closed. But when this situation arose, it seemed like the perfect solution." Perfect. That word echoed in my head as I stumbled to my feet. "Emma, don't be dramatic," Olivia sighed. "It's just a house." But it wasn't just a house. It was my dream, my 5 years of sacrifice, my future that had been within touching distance, and my family had snatched it away without a second thought. Did you even like that house before you knew I wanted it? I asked Olivia. She shrugged. It's growing on me, and it's a great investment property. Investment property. The house I'd envisioned lovingly restoring room by room, where I'd planned to build a life, was just another asset in her portfolio. I left without another word, tears blurring the road as I drove to Sophia's apartment. She answered the door in pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. "What happened?" she demanded, already pouring wine. I told her everything, the words tumbling out between sobs. How my parents had helped fund Olivia's cash offer. How they seemed genuinely confused by my distress, as if I should be happy to step aside for my sister. "They've always favored her," I said, wiping my eyes with the tissue Sophia handed me. "But I never thought they'd do something like this." Sophia's expression hardened. "This isn't just favoritism, Em. This is theft. They knew how hard you worked. For that house. They knew what it meant to you. And now it's gone. The sellers will take Olivia's cash offer. Why wouldn't they?" "Maybe not," Sophia said slowly. "You signed a contract, right?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. There are legal obligations on both sides. I shook my head. There's a financing contingency. If my loan doesn't come through, the contract is void. But your loan problem isn't a normal glitch. If someone tampered with your application, that's fraud. I can't prove it was them. You don't have to. You just need to prove someone did it and that your original application was valid. A tiny spark of hope flickered in my chest. "Do you really think there's a chance?" Sophia refilled our glasses. "I think you've spent your whole life being the responsible one, the one who doesn't rock the boat. Maybe it's time to fight back." That night, I slept on Sophia's couch, my dreams filled with the house on Oak Street slipping further and further away. In the morning, I called Michael. If anyone would understand the intricacies of the situation, it would be my real estate agent. "I need to meet with you," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Today." 3 hours later, I sat across from Michael in his downtown office, my hands clutched around a coffee mug as I explained what had happened. To his credit, he looked genuinely horrified. "Your sister is trying to buy the house out from under you? With your parents' help?" I nodded, the betrayal still fresh and raw. "They've already contacted the sellers. Olivia's making a cash offer." Michael set his own mug down with deliberate care. "Emma, there's something you should know. In this state, once an offer is accepted and a contract is signed, the sellers can't simply walk away to accept a better offer. That's called a breach of contract. But my financing fell through. Temporarily, due to suspicious activity that wasn't your fault. That's different from being denied a loan based on your actual qualifications." He turned to his computer, typing rapidly. "The sellers have obligations to you as the buyer in good faith. If they break the contract to sell to your sister instead, you could potentially sue for specific performance." Specific performance? It's a legal remedy that would force them to honor the original contract, to sell the house to you, not your sister. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a flicker of real hope. What do I need to do? First, we document everything. The original loan approval, the sudden discrepancy, the timing of your sister's offer. Then we consult with a real estate attorney. By that afternoon, I had an appointment with Daniel Thompson, a real estate attorney whose office occupied a converted Victorian house on Maple Street. He listened intently as I laid out the timeline, occasionally making notes. "The timing is certainly suspicious," he agreed when I finished. "If someone deliberately tampered with your loan application, that's fraud. And if your sister and parents conspired to create this situation, they could be liable." "I don't want to sue my family," I said, the words tasting bitter. "I just want my house." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. Let's start by securing your position with the sellers. I'll draft a letter informing them that you're investigating potential fraud and still intend to close as soon as possible. That should make them think twice about accepting another offer. And if they've already accepted Olivia's, then we move to the next phase. But one step at a time, Ms. Davis. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Family dinner tonight. We need to talk about this situation like adults. Like adults. As if I were the one behaving childishly by being upset about their betrayal. I didn't reply. Instead, I called the mortgage company again, insisting on speaking to a supervisor about the mysterious changes to my application. After being transferred 3 times, I finally found someone who would look into the access logs. There was an online change made to your application last Tuesday, she confirmed. It listed a new debt that hadn't been there before, which is what triggered our fraud alert. Can you tell who made the change? It came from an IP address. Let me see. Yes, it's here in the notes. Would you like me to email you the details for your fraud report? Tuesday evening, when I'd been at my parents' house showing them pictures of the craftsman on my laptop, when I'd stepped away to help Mom with dessert, leaving my computer open on the kitchen table, where Olivia had been sitting. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This hadn't been opportunistic, it had been calculated. Olivia had deliberately sabotaged my loan application, knowing it would create an opening for her. And my parents, whether they knew about the sabotage or not, had chosen to fund her betrayal instead of helping me. It was time to stop being the responsible daughter who never made waves. It was time to fight. The family dinner invitation felt like a trap. As I pulled into my parents' driveway that evening, I reminded myself to stay calm, to not show my hand. Knowledge was power. And right now, I knew something they didn't. I had evidence of deliberate sabotage, the familiar scent of my mother's. Lasagna greeted me when I walked through the door. Home-cooked comfort food, the traditional Davis family peace offering. I almost laughed at the transparency of it. Emma, sweetheart, Mom called from the kitchen. Just in time. Your father's opening wine. They were acting so normal, as if they hadn't participated in destroying my dream less than 24 hours ago. I found my sister lounging in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up with a carefully composed expression of sympathy. Hey, Em. Glad you came. I said nothing, just nodded and passed her to help set the table. A lifetime habit of being the helpful daughter, even now. Dad appeared with an opened bottle of Cabernet, his smile strained at the edges. There's my girl. Let's have a nice dinner and sort all this out, okay? The normality of it was suffocating. Setting the table with the same plates I'd eaten from as a child. The same chairs where we'd celebrated birthdays and discussed report cards. The same family that had just betrayed me in the most fundamental way. Mom brought out the lasagna, Dad poured the wine, and we all sat down as if this were any ordinary Tuesday night. I took a sip of wine, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. Well, Mom finally said, I know things got heated yesterday, but we're family. We can talk through anything. I set my glass down carefully. Yes, let's talk. Let's talk about how my loan application was mysteriously altered last Tuesday evening while my laptop was sitting open on this very table. The momentary freeze in Olivia's movement was almost imperceptible. Almost. What are you implying? Dad asked, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. Someone added a debt to my application that wasn't there before, which triggered the fraud alert. The mortgage company confirmed it happened Tuesday night, when I was here showing you all pictures of the house, when I left my computer unattended, to help Mom with dessert. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me. Mom looked genuinely confused. Dad's expression was shifting from bewilderment to concern. But Olivia's face had gone carefully blank in that way it always did when she was caught in a lie. "That's ridiculous," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Why would anyone do that? You tell me, Liv." "Because the change came from an IP address that the mortgage company has emailed to me. I'm having it traced." This last part was a bluff, but a calculated one. Mom set her fork down with a clatter. "Emma, surely you're not accusing your sister of—" "Actually, I am. And I'm also informing all of you that I've consulted with a real estate attorney. What's happened here isn't just unethical, it may be fraud. And my lawyer is preparing to notify the sellers that they can't legally accept another offer while my contract is still valid." Dad's face had gone pale. "You're bringing lawyers into a family matter?" "You brought real estate into a family matter," I countered. "You encouraged Olivia to steal my house instead of helping me fix the problem." "We didn't steal anything," Mom protested. "The contract was void when your financing fell through." "Except it wasn't. Not if the financing issue was caused by deliberate interference. Then it's fraud, and the contract is still enforceable." Olivia pushed her plate away, all pretense of appetite gone. "This is insane. You're really going to sue your own family over a house?" "That house represents 5 years of my life, Liv. 5 years of sacrifice and planning and work. You didn't even want it until you knew how much it meant to me." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You called it very Emma with that dismissive little tone of yours. You said you'd gut it if it were yours. You called it an investment property. Not a home, not a place you loved, just another asset." Dad raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Let's all calm down. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for the loan issue." "There is. Olivia sabotaged it so she could swoop in with your money and take what I'd worked for." A heavy silence fell over the table. Mom looked back and forth between us, her expression crumpling. "Olivia, tell your sister that's not true." Olivia stared at her plate, saying nothing. "Olivia?" Dad's voice had an edge now. My sister finally looked up, her eyes defiant despite the flush spreading across her cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I just wanted you to see that she's not as perfect as you think. That I could be responsible too." Mom let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "What did you do?" "I just added a credit card to her application. One with a high balance. I thought it would just delay things, make her have to explain it. I didn't think it would trigger a fraud investigation. And then when it did, you saw an opportunity," I finished for her, a cold clarity washing over me. "You could step in, be the hero with a cash offer, finally win Mom and Dad's approval." "It wasn't like that," Olivia insisted, but her eyes slid away from mine. Dad ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking every one of his 59 years. This is unacceptable, Olivia. You deliberately sabotaged your sister?" "You helped her do it," I reminded him. "Maybe not the sabotage part, but you were quick enough to fund her offer when you thought I couldn't close. You chose her over me, just like you always have." "That's not fair, Emma," Mom protested. "We've always been proud of you. Proud, but not supportive. Not in the ways that matter. We thought we were being supportive by helping you become independent," Dad argued. "Olivia needed more help, more guidance. And look how well that turned out," I said quietly. "She never had to work for anything because you always provided a safety net. So when she saw something she couldn't have, she didn't think about earning it. She thought about taking it." Olivia pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm not going to sit here and be lectured. I made a mistake, okay? I admit it. But don't act like you're perfect, Emma. You've always been so superior, so judgmental of my choices. Why can't you be more like your sister? That's all I've heard my entire life. I never asked to be the measuring stick," I said. "I just tried to do the right thing, always. And this is where it got me. Betrayed by my own family." I stood up, dinner barely touched. "I'm leaving now. My lawyer will be in touch with all of you, and with the sellers. Wait, Dad called, as I headed for the door. What do you want, Emma? How do we fix this? I turned back, looking at these 3 people who shared my blood but seemed like strangers now. I want my house. The house I found, the house I contracted for, the house I'm going to restore the way it deserves. And I want an apology, a real one, not just words to smooth things over until the next time you decide my needs matter less than Olivia's. Mom was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Dad looked stunned, as if he'd never truly seen me before this moment. And Olivia just looked defeated. We'll make this right, Dad said finally. Somehow, we'll make it right. I didn't trust his definition of right anymore, so I simply nodded and left. The night air felt cleansing against my hot cheeks as I walked to my car. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, adrenaline and emotion finally catching up to me. I'd done it. After 30 years of being the peacekeeper, the responsible one who never made waves, I'd finally stood up for myself. The realization brought not triumph but exhaustion. I drove to Sophia's apartment, needing a friendly face. She answered the door in sweatpants, her hair piled on top of her head, a glass of wine already in hand. One look at my face and she pulled me inside. You confronted them, she said, not a question. Olivia confessed, I confirmed, sinking onto her couch. She tampered with my loan application. She actually admitted it. Sophia handed me her wine glass and poured herself another. Holy shit. That's criminal, Emma. I know. I took a long swallow. I told them I've consulted a lawyer, that the sellers can't legally accept another offer. What did they say? Dad promised they'd make it right, whatever that means. Sophia sat beside me, tucking her feet under her. Do you trust them to fix it? No, I admitted. I don't. Not anymore. She squeezed my hand. Then we keep fighting. We don't wait for them to decide what's right. We take action. I'm so tired, Soph. I've been fighting for everything my entire adult life. Just once, I wanted something to be easy. I know, honey. But think about how good it will feel when you're sitting on that front porch of your house, knowing you stood up for yourself and won. The image made me smile despite everything. Me, on that wide craftsman porch, maybe with a cup of coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mine, because I'd fought for it. You're right, I said, straightening my shoulders. No more waiting for other people to do the right thing. First thing the next morning, I met with Daniel Thompson, my attorney. His office felt like a sanctuary, all dark wood and leather-bound books, far removed from the emotional chaos of my family's kitchen. Your sister confessed to tampering with the loan application? He asked, looking up from his notes. Yes, in front of my parents. She admitted, adding a fake debt to trigger problems. He made another note. That's significant. It establishes that your financing didn't fall through due to any legitimate issue with your qualifications. So what's our next step? I've already drafted letters to the sellers and their agent, informing them of the situation and warning them against accepting any other offers while your contract is still valid. Now we need to get your financing back on track. I called the mortgage company yesterday after discovering what happened. They're reopening my application, but it will still take time. Time we may not have, Daniel mused. Do you have access to any bridge financing? A temporary loan from another source to close on schedule? I thought of my savings, already depleted by the down payment. Not really. My parents would be the obvious choice, but they're part of the problem, he finished. I understand. My phone buzzed with a text. Michael, my real estate agent. Need to talk ASAP. Sellers got another offer. My heart sank. They've already received Olivia's offer. We're too late. Daniel leaned forward. Not necessarily. The sellers haven't accepted it yet, correct? I don't know. Let me call Michael. He nodded, stepping out to give me privacy. Michael answered on the first ring. Emma, the sellers just called me. They've received a cash offer from another buyer. My sister, I supplied. Yes, though. They didn't say that. They wanted to know if you're still planning to close or if they should consider the new offer. Hope flickered. They haven't accepted it? No. Apparently, they're hesitating because they really liked you. They remember restoring their first home, too. But Emma, they need to close quickly. Their new job starts in 2 weeks. I thought quickly. Tell them I'm still committed to closing. My financing issue was due to fraud. Someone deliberately tampered with my application. The mortgage company is correcting it, but it will take a few more days. That might buy us some time, but eventually they'll need certainty. I know. I'm working on it, just... Please, Michael, help me keep this house. I'll do my best. But Emma, prepare yourself. Money talks in real estate, and a cash offer is very appealing to sellers in a hurry. After hanging up, I relayed the conversation to Daniel. At least they haven't accepted the other offer yet, he said. That gives us a window of opportunity. Let me reach out to the seller's attorney directly, lawyer to lawyer. Sometimes that carries more weight. As I left his office, my phone rang. Dad. Emma, we need to talk, he said without preamble. Can you meet me at the diner on Main? Just me, not Mom or Olivia. The old Emma would have agreed instantly, eager to smooth things over. The new Emma hesitated. Why? Because I owe you an apology, and I'd rather do it in person. Please. 20 minutes later, I slid into a booth across from my father. He looked like he hadn't slept, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. I ordered you black coffee, he said, gesturing to the mug in front of me. Still how you take it. I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic. You wanted to talk? He sighed heavily. I've been doing a lot of thinking since last night, about the choices your mother and I have made, about how different our approach has been with you and Olivia. You mean how you've always sheltered her and pushed me to be independent? Yes. He looked me directly in the eyes, something he rarely did during difficult conversations. We thought we were doing right by both of you. You were always so capable, so responsible. We wanted to foster that independence, and Olivia seemed to need more support, more guidance. So you made me the adult and kept her the child. He winced. That's painfully accurate. We didn't see it that way, but looking back, yes. We created a dynamic that wasn't fair to either of you. Olivia never had to develop the resilience you have, and you never got the support you deserved. I sipped my coffee, letting his words sink in. I appreciate the insight, Dad, but it doesn't change what happened with the house. That's actually why I wanted to meet. I've withdrawn our financial support for Olivia's offer. She won't be buying the house. Surprise flashed through. Me. Really? Yes. What she did was wrong. Fundamentally wrong. And our knee-jerk response to help her instead of you was wrong too. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. This is a cashier's check for $30,000. It's not a loan, it's a gift, to help with any additional costs while your financing gets sorted out. I stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. Why now? Why not before, when I was struggling to save every penny for 5 years? Because I didn't see it until last night. Didn't see how we've been treating you differently your whole life. Didn't understand the message we were sending, that your hard work was expected while Olivia's smallest efforts were celebrated. He pushed the envelope closer. I can't undo the past, Emma, but I can try to do better starting now. I finally took the envelope, still not sure how I felt about this gesture. Thank you. This will help. But Dad, the damage isn't just financial. You and Mom and Olivia, you all showed me where I stand in this family. How do we come back from that? I don't know, he admitted, but I'd like to try. Starting with helping. You get your house. The house is just a symbol of the larger issue. I understand that, but it's a start. A concrete way to show that we respect what you've worked for. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, seller's attorney receptive. They'll wait 48 hours for proof of financing resolution before considering other offers. Relief washed through me. The sellers are giving me 48 hours, I told Dad. If I can prove my financing is back on track, they'll honor our contract. Then we'll make it happen. He pulled out his own phone. I have a friend at First National. Let me make a call, see if we can expedite things. For the first time in days, I felt the knot in my chest loosen slightly. Not because my father was stepping in to help, though that was welcome, but because, for once, his help wasn't coming at the expense of my agency. He wasn't taking over. He was supporting my fight. There's something else, Dad said after ending his call. Olivia wants to talk to you. She's not in a good place right now. The familiar tug of responsibility pulled at me. Did she send you to soften me up? No, she doesn't know I'm here. But Emma, whatever she did, and it was wrong, no question, she's still your sister. At some point, you two need to have a conversation. Maybe, but not today. Today I'm focusing on fixing what she broke. He nodded, accepting this boundary. Fair enough. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help with the house. As we parted outside the diner, he hugged me awkwardly, something he rarely did since I'd grown up. I'm proud of you, Emma. Not just for your accomplishments, but for standing up for yourself, even when it meant standing up to us. The words hit a place in me I hadn't realized was still raw and hungry for validation. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. Thanks, Dad. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and document signings. The mortgage company expedited my revised application after I filed a formal fraud report detailing Olivia's tampering. Dad's connection at First National agreed to provide a letter confirming they would step in with bridge financing if needed to ensure the closing happened on schedule. By the time the seller's deadline arrived, I had everything in order. Proof of my reinstated original loan approval, the fraud investigation findings, and the backup financing commitment. Daniel delivered the package himself to the seller's attorney. Now we wait, he told me by phone afterward. But Emma, you've done everything right. There's no legitimate reason for them to back out now. I spent that evening at Sophia's again, too anxious to be alone. We ordered pizza, opened wine, and tried to distract ourselves with bad reality TV. When my phone rang at 9:47 p.m., we both jumped. It was Michael. The sellers have made their decision, he said, his voice giving nothing away. They're sticking with our contract. We're back on for closing next Tuesday. A sob of relief caught in my throat. Really? They're not taking the cash offer? No. Your attorney's presentation was very persuasive, and frankly, the sellers were disturbed by the circumstances. They said they wouldn't feel right selling to someone who had deliberately undermined another buyer. Sophia was staring at me questioningly. I gave her a thumbs up, and she squealed, throwing her arms around me. Thank you, Michael, I managed, through my emotion. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you have keys in hand. But Emma, this is how it should be. You earned that house. After we hung up, Sophia poured more wine, offering a toast. To standing your ground. I clinked my glass against hers. To finding out who your real allies are. Are you going to tell your family tonight? I considered it, then shook my head. Tomorrow. Tonight belongs to us, the people who actually had my back. When I did call my parents the next morning, Mom answered, her voice tentative. Emma, how are you, sweetheart? I'm good, Mom. The sellers have agreed to honor our original contract. I'm closing on the house next Tuesday. Her relieved exhale was audible. Oh, thank goodness. Your father told me about meeting you, about the check. I'm so glad it helped. It did. But that's not why they chose to honor the contract. They did it because it was the right thing to do. A pause. Yes, of course. Well, this calls for a celebration. Why don't you come for dinner Sunday? Just the four of us, as a family. The invitation triggered a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to decline, to keep my distance, until the wounds were less fresh. But another part recognized this for what it was, an olive branch, a chance to begin rebuilding what had been broken. I'll be there, I said finally. But Mom, things aren't just going back to normal. We have a lot to work through. I know, sweetheart, but we love you and we want to try. That's a start, isn't it? It's a start, I agreed. See you Sunday. Olivia was subdued when I arrived for dinner, her usual confident demeanor replaced by something more hesitant. She cornered me in the kitchen while Mom was setting the table. I want to apologize, she said quietly. What I did was unforgivable. I've been talking to someone about it, a therapist. She's helping me understand why I did it. And why was that? She stared at the floor. Jealousy, resentment. I've spent my whole life feeling like I couldn't measure up to you. You're so complete, Emma. You know who you are, what you want. I've been drifting, pretending I chose this freedom when really I was just afraid. To commit to anything in case I failed. The raw honesty in her voice caught me off guard. I didn't know you felt that way. How could you? I never said it. I just acted out instead. She finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm trying to be better. I studied my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. Behind the pretty face and carefree attitude, I saw uncertainty, fear, a woman trying to find her place in the world just like I was. It's going to take time, Liv. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I know. She nodded rapidly. I know that. But maybe someday we could try again. Being sisters, I mean. Real ones. I thought of the house on Oak Street waiting for me. The fresh start it represented, not just in a physical space, but in how I viewed myself and my relationships. Maybe, I said, one day at a time. Dinner was awkward, but not unbearable. We carefully avoided certain topics, focusing instead on neutral ground, a new restaurant downtown, Dad's golf game, a movie Mom had enjoyed. It wasn't perfect, but it was civil. A beginning. As I was leaving, Dad walked me to my car. So, Tuesday's the big day. Are you excited? Terrified and excited, I admitted. It's a big responsibility, owning a home like that. But I'm ready. He smiled, a genuine one that reached his eyes. You've always been ready, Emma, for everything life throws at you. That's what makes you special. Thanks, Dad. Would it be all right if your mother and I came to the closing? Not to interfere, just to be there, to support you. The question touched me in an unexpected way. All my life, I'd handled the big moments alone, prided myself on my independence. But maybe true strength wasn't about doing everything solo. Maybe it was about knowing when to let others stand beside you. I'd like that, I said, surprising both of us. 2 days. Later, I sat in a conference room at the title company, my parents quietly seated against the wall behind me. Michael sat to my right, a reassuring presence as I signed document after document, deed, mortgage, insurance forms, tax declarations. With each signature, the reality sank in deeper. This was happening. The house would be mine. Finally, the closing agent smiled and handed me a set of keys. "Congratulations, Ms. Davis. You are now officially a homeowner." The room broke into applause. Michael, the agents, even the closing staff. My parents stood, Mom wiping away tears, Dad beaming with pride that I now recognized had always been there, even when he'd shown it imperfectly. Outside, on the steps of the title company, Michael shook my hand. "Congratulations, Emma. You earned this, every bit of it. Thank you for fighting for me, for believing in me." He smiled. "That part was easy. You did all the hard work." As he walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Keys in hand yet? Come straight to the house when you're done. I have supplies." I turned to my parents. "I'm heading to the house now. Sophia's meeting me there with, quote, supplies, which knowing her means champagne and takeout. Perfect housewarming," Mom said, her smile a bit wistful. "You go ahead. This moment belongs to you." I hesitated, then offered something I wouldn't have imagined giving a week ago. "Why don't you come by later, around 7? Bring dessert." Their faces lit up with surprise and gratitude. "We'd love that," Dad said. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of 247 Oak Street. My driveway, my address. Sophia was already there, sitting on the front steps with a picnic basket and a bottle of champagne. "There she is," she called, jumping up as I approached. "Lakeside's newest homeowner." I climbed the steps slowly, taking in every detail. The solid wooden porch under my feet, the leaded glass in the front door, the view of the neighborhood from what was now my perspective. "Ready?" Sophia asked, gesturing to the door. I fitted the key into the lock, feeling the mechanism turn smoothly. The door swung open to reveal the entryway I'd fallen in love with a month ago. Hardwood floors gleaming in the afternoon light, built-in bookshelves waiting to be filled, bay window framing the garden beyond. But something was different. Banner hung above the fireplace, "Home at last." And on the mantel sat a small wooden house, hand-carved and polished to a warm glow. "What's this?" I asked, picking it up. Sophia shrugged. "It was here when I arrived. There's a card." The envelope simply said, "Emma," in familiar handwriting. Inside was a note from my father. "This was the first piece I ever saw your grandfather carve. He made it when he bought his first home. Said it reminded him that a house becomes a home through the love and care you put into it. He'd want you to have it now. We are so proud of you. Love, Dad." Tears sprang to my eyes as I placed the carving back on the mantel, the first piece of decor in my new home. "You okay?" Sophia asked gently. I looked around at the empty rooms waiting to be filled, the walls waiting for color, the garden waiting to bloom. Rooms where I would laugh and cry and grow. A house that I had fought for and won, not just against others, but against the part of myself that had always settled for less than I deserved. "I'm perfect," I said, and for the first time in a very long time, I actually meant it. The first month in my new home passed in a blur of paint swatches, furniture deliveries, and late nights restoring original woodwork. I took a week off from client projects to focus solely on making the craftsman livable, starting with the essentials: bedroom, bathroom, and a functional kitchen. The rest would come with time. Each morning, I woke with the sun streaming through, leaded glass windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Each evening, I collapsed exhausted but fulfilled onto a mattress surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. The house hummed with potential, revealing its secrets day by day. A hidden pocket door between the dining room and kitchen, original hardwood, under tattered hallway carpet, Art Deco bathroom tiles preserved beneath layers of outdated linoleum. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks," Sophia commented one Saturday. arriving with coffee and bagels to help install shelving in the living room. But happy. Definitely happy. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Is it that obvious? You've got plaster dust in your hair and a smile that won't quit. It's a good look on you. We spent the day measuring, drilling, and mounting shelves along the wall flanking the fireplace. By sunset, I'd filled them with my collection of architecture, books, my grandfather's woodworking manuals, and framed photos of finished restoration projects. It's starting to look like you, Sophia said, stepping back to admire our work. Like Emma's place, not just a house you moved into. That was exactly how it felt, like I was imprinting myself on these walls, and they were accepting me in return. Every creak in the floorboards, every temperamental radiator, every stubborn window that needed the perfect touch to open smoothly. They weren't flaws, but personality traits I was learning to love. My relationship with my family remained cautiously cordial during those early weeks. Mom called regularly to check on my progress, but was careful not to overstep. Dad dropped by occasionally with tools or supplies, always texting first to make sure it was a good time, and Olivia kept her distance entirely, her absence a lingering reminder of the wounds still healing between us. Then came the unexpected call that would shift everything once again. I was stripping decades of paint from the dining room built-ins when my phone rang, a local number I didn't recognize. "Is this Emma Davis?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, that's me." "Emma, my name is Helen Morrow. I'm not sure if you remember me. I was the listing agent for your house." Of course I remembered her, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd been pleasant but professional during our limited interactions. Michael had handled most of the communication with her. "Yes, Ms. Morrow, what can I do for you?" She paused, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background. "I was hoping we might meet for coffee. There's something I'd like to discuss with you regarding your purchase." A flutter of anxiety rose in my chest. "Is there a problem with the sale?" No, nothing like that," she assured me quickly. "The sale is final and everything is in order. This is something else. Something I think you should know." Curiosity replaced concern. "All right. When would you like to meet?" We arranged to meet the following morning at Lakeside Brew, a cozy coffee shop overlooking the water. I arrived early, selecting a quiet corner table away from the morning rush of commuters. Helen arrived precisely on time, dressed in a tailored pantsuit with a silk scarf knotted at her neck, looking every bit the successful real estate professional. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, settling into the chair across from me. I ordered a latte at the counter. "Do you have what you need?" I nodded, wrapping my hands around my mug of black coffee. "So, what's this about?" Helen reached into her leather portfolio and extracted a manila folder. "First, I want to say that what I'm about to tell you isn't something I'd normally share. Client confidentiality is sacrosanct in my business. But this situation? Well, it didn't sit right with me. Hasn't sat right with me since it happened." She opened the folder and pushed it toward me. Inside was a printed email with the subject, line, "Urgent, regarding the Oak Street property." My sister's name was in the sender field. "Your sister contacted me directly," Helen explained, "the day after you had the issue with your financing. She said she understood you could no longer close on the house and wanted to make an offer immediately, a cash offer." My jaw tightened. "Yes, I'm aware. She admitted to sabotaging my loan application." Helen's eyebrows shot up. "She admitted it? Well, that makes what I'm about to tell you a bit easier. Because you see, she didn't just make an offer. She told me specific details about your loan application. Details she shouldn't have known unless she had access to your private financial information." I skimmed the email, feeling sick as I read Olivia's words. "I understand my sister's application was flagged for a previously undisclosed debt of approximately $28,000. I can assure you that I have no such financial complications." This struck me as odd, Helen continued. How would she know the specific amount that caused the flag? So I did some digging. Called a colleague who works with the mortgage company you used. Without revealing any confidential information, she confirmed that someone had accessed your application improperly. I looked up from the email. My sister confessed to adding a fake debt to my application. What I don't understand is why you're telling me this now, after the sale is complete. Helen folded her hands on the table. Because it wasn't just your sister involved. There was a second access attempt from a different computer, on the same network but a different device. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You're saying someone else in my family tried to access my information as well? I can't say for certain who it was. But yes, there were 2 separate attempts from the same IP address. One succeeded in making changes, the other was just accessing and viewing the information. She paused, watching me carefully. I thought, you should know. My mind raced through possibilities. 2 attempts from the same network, our family home's Wi-Fi. Olivia had admitted to the first, but who had made the second? Mom? Dad? Or had Olivia simply used 2 different devices? Why? Tell me this now? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside. The house is mine. The situation was resolved. Helen's expression softened. Because in 30 years of real estate, I've seen too many families torn apart by property disputes. Some wounds heal with time, but secrets left to fester only grow more toxic. You deserve to know the full truth so you can decide what to do with it. She slid a second paper across the table, a printout of access logs showing 2 distinct device IDs accessing my loan information within hours of each other. I shouldn't have this, she admitted. My contact took a risk sharing it. But sometimes, doing the right thing means bending the rules. She closed her portfolio and stood. The house is yours, Emma. You fought for it fairly. What you do with this information is entirely up to you. I remained at the table long after Helen had gone, staring at the printouts and trying to make sense of what they meant. 2 access attempts. One I knew was Olivia. But the second? The thought that either of my parents might have been actively involved in the sabotage, not just passive enablers, opened a wound I thought had begun to heal. When I finally left the coffee shop, I didn't drive home. Instead, I found myself heading toward my parents' house, the printouts burning a hole in my bag. I needed answers, not more secrets. Mom answered the door in gardening clothes, dirt smudged across one cheek. Her smile of greeting faltered when she saw my expression. Emma, is everything all right? Is Dad home? I asked, stepping past her into the foyer. In his study. Emma, what's wrong? I didn't answer, just moved down the hallway to my father's study and pushed open the door without knocking. He looked up from his computer, surprised. Emma, I didn't know you were coming by today. I need to talk to you both, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. Now. Mom appeared behind me, concern etched across her features. You're scaring me, sweetheart. What's happened? I pulled the printouts from my bag and placed them on Dad's desk. I just had an interesting meeting with Helen Morrow, the listing agent for my house. She shared some information with me, information about the tampering with my loan application. Dad glanced at the papers, confusion evident. I thought we'd moved past this. Olivia admitted what she did, and we've all been trying to make amends. These are access logs, I explained, pointing to the second page. They show 2 separate attempts to access my loan information. 2 different devices, same network. This house's Wi-Fi. I looked between them. Olivia was one. Who was the second? The color drained from my mother's face. Dad's expression remained carefully blank. I want the truth, I said quietly. All of it. No more family secrets, no more half-truths to protect feelings. Who else tried to access my financial information? The silence stretched taut between us, broken finally by my father clearing his throat. "I did," he said, his voice barely audible. Mom gasped softly. I felt the floor shift beneath me, though I remained standing. "You?" I managed. Dad nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Not to change anything. I wanted to see if there was really a problem, if we could help somehow. "Why not just ask me?" "Because you wouldn't have told us if there was a problem," Mom interjected. "You never do, Emma. You've always handled everything yourself, refused help even when you needed it." "So, instead, you invaded my privacy? Accessed my confidential financial information without my consent?" Dad ran a hand over his face. "It wasn't like that. Olivia came to us, said she'd heard from a friend at the bank that your loan application had hit a snag. I was worried. I just wanted to see how serious it was, if there was a way to fix it without embarrassing you. And when you saw the problem, did you question it? Did you think it was strange that a supposed debt had appeared that I'd never mentioned?" "I didn't actually see the changes," Dad admitted. "The system locked me out after a few attempts. I'm not good with that sort of thing." "But Olivia managed just fine," I said bitterly. "We didn't know what she'd done," Mom insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "Not until you confronted us at dinner. You have to believe that, Emma." "What I believe," I said carefully, "is that this family has a fundamental problem with boundaries, with respecting each other as adults, with honesty." Dad finally looked up, his expression pained. "You're right. We've made mistakes, serious ones. But Emma, we're trying to do better, to be better." I thought of the house on Oak Street, the home I'd created there in just a month's time, the peace I'd found in its rooms, the pride in each, restoration project completed. After so much drama and pain, did I really want to reopen those wounds now? But secrets had power only when they remained hidden. Exposed to light, they lost their hold. "I appreciate your honesty," I said finally. "But this changes things. I need some time to process what this means for us moving forward." "We understand," Mom said quickly, reaching for my hand but stopping short when I stepped back. "Take all the time you need." As I turned to leave, Dad spoke again. "Emma, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for looking at your information, but for everything. For the years of expecting more from you than from Olivia. For not seeing how unfair we've been." The sincerity in his voice touched something in me, but I wasn't ready to offer absolution. Not yet. "I know," I said simply, and left. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts too chaotic to process. At home, I wandered from room to room, seeing the progress I'd made in making this space my own. The partially stripped built-ins in the dining room, the vintage light fixture I'd rewired in the hallway, the garden beds I'd begun clearing of weeds and overgrowth. I ended up on the front porch, settling into the Adirondack chair I'd placed there for morning coffee and evening reflection. The neighborhood was quiet in the late afternoon, just the distant sound of children playing and the occasional car passing by. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Still on for dinner? I can pick up Ty on my way over." Before I could reply, a car pulled into my driveway, a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. The driver's door opened, and to my shock, Olivia stepped out. We hadn't spoken since the family dinner weeks ago. She'd sent a housewarming gift, a set of vintage doorknobs that actually matched the home's period, but had respected my need for space. Now she stood awkwardly by her car, clearly uncertain of her welcome. "Can we talk?" she called softly. My first instinct was to refuse, to tell her this wasn't a good time. But the revelations of the day had left me raw, open in a way that made evasion seem pointless. "Come up," I replied, not moving from my chair. She climbed the porch steps slowly, taking in the improvements I'd made to the exterior. Fresh paint. On the trim, new house numbers, potted plants flanking the entrance. "It looks amazing," she said, genuine admiration in her voice. "So much more alive than when you first saw it." "Thanks." I gestured to the second Adirondack chair. "You can sit if you want." She perched on the edge of the seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Up close, I could see the strain of recent weeks in the shadows under her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. "Mom called me," she began. "Told me about your visit, about what Dad admitted. And you rushed right over. To do damage control?" My tone was sharper than I'd intended. She shook her head. "No. I came because I realized I've never really apologized. Not properly. You said you were sorry at dinner." "I said words, Emma. That's not the same thing." She took a deep breath. "The truth is, I've been envious of you my whole life. You've always known who you are, what you want. You work for things and achieve them. I've just drifted, taken the easy route. So you decided to punish me for it? By trying to steal the one thing I'd worked hardest for?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't think of it that way. I told myself I deserved a chance too. That it wasn't fair that you always got the praise, the respect, while I was treated like the family screw-up. You think I wanted that pressure? That impossible standard? No. I see that now." She wiped at her cheeks with the back of her hand. "My therapist has been helping me understand how much I've been seeking external validation instead of figuring out what I actually want from life, who I want to be." "And who is that?" She smiled faintly. "I'm still working on it, but I know who I don't want to be anymore. The person who hurt you. The person who took shortcuts instead of putting in the work." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding and resentment between us. But for the first time, it felt like we were both acknowledging it rather than pretending it didn't exist. "I'm sorry, Emma," she said finally, her voice steady despite the tears. "Truly sorry for tampering with your loan application, for trying to take your house, for years of resenting you instead of appreciating you. You didn't deserve any of it." The genuine remorse in her words reached a place in me that had been braced for more excuses, more deflection. "Thank you for saying that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm working to be better." She rose to leave. "I'll let you get back to your evening." As she turned toward the steps, I found myself speaking. "Olivia, if you really want to make amends, there is something you could do." She turned back, hope flickering across her face. "Anything." "I'm restoring the original built-ins in the dining room this weekend. It's a 2-person job. You could help if you want." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an opening, a small crack in the wall I'd built between us. "I'd like that?" she said, a tentative smile appearing. "Just tell me when to be here." After she left, I texted Sophia back. "Still on for dinner. A lot to tell you." The following Saturday, Olivia arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, dressed in old jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked nervous, but determined. "I've never done anything like this," she admitted, examining the half-stripped built-in cabinets. "I'm not sure how much help I'll be." "You can start by sanding where I've already removed the paint," I said, handing her a fine grit. "Sandpaper block. Just follow the grain of the wood, like this." I demonstrated with slow, even strokes. She mimicked my movements, her touch tentative at first, then more confident as she got a feel for the process. "Like this?" "Perfect." We worked side by side in companionable silence, the only sounds the scrape of sandpaper against wood and the oldies rock station playing from my portable speaker. Gradually, the awkwardness between us eased as we focused on the task at hand. How do you know? When you've sanded enough? Olivia asked, running her fingers over the section she'd been working on. I moved closer, examining her work. It should feel smooth to the touch, with no rough patches. See how it has a subtle sheen now? That means you're getting down to the natural wood. She nodded, looking pleased with herself. It's oddly satisfying, seeing the real wood emerge from under all those layers of paint. That's what I love about restoration, I said, returning to my own section. Uncovering what's been hidden. Bringing back what was beautiful all along. Olivia was quiet for a moment, focusing intently on her sanding. Then, without looking up, do you think that's possible with people too? Restoration? The question hung between us, layered with meaning beyond the simple words. I think so, I said finally. People accumulate layers too, protective coatings, misplaced priorities, patterns that hide their true grain. But underneath, there's still something authentic, something worth saving. She nodded, blinking rapidly. I hope you're right. By late afternoon, we'd stripped and sanded all the lower cabinets, revealing beautiful quarter-sawn oak that had been hidden beneath decades of paint. We stood back, admiring the transformation. It's incredible, Olivia said. I never would have guessed there was something so beautiful underneath. Most people don't, I replied. They see the surface problems and decide it's easier to tear out and replace than to restore. Their loss, she said softly. This is so much more special than anything new could be. The evening light was fading when we finally cleaned up our tools and swept the sawdust from the floor. Olivia helped me tarp the unfinished upper cabinets before washing her hands in the kitchen sink. I should get going, she said, drying her hands on a paper towel. Thank you for letting me help. Today, it meant a lot. You did good work, I said and meant it. You have a steady hand, good attention to detail. She smiled, a genuine smile that reminded me of when we were children, before competition and resentment had come between us. Same time tomorrow. For the upper cabinets? I nodded. Bring coffee. After she left, I wandered through the house, mentally cataloging the projects still to come. The upstairs bathroom needed a complete renovation. The kitchen cabinets needed refinishing. The back porch steps needed replacing. So much work ahead, but today had been a good reminder of why it was worth it. My phone rang. Dad calling. I hesitated, then answered. Emma, just checking in. Your mother and I were wondering if you'd like to come for Sunday dinner tomorrow. I thought of Olivia returning in the morning to help with the upper cabinets, of the fragile new understanding beginning to form between us. Actually, I said, why don't you and Mom come here instead? Nothing fancy. We could order pizza. I'd like to show you the progress I've made. His surprise was evident in the pause before he answered. We'd love that, Emma. What time? Around 6? And Dad, ask Mom to bring some of her garden flowers for the dining room table. The built-ins will be finished by then. She'll be thrilled. We'll see you tomorrow. As I ended the call, I walked to the bay window overlooking the garden. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown beds that would be my next restoration project. So much work still to do, but for the first time since moving in, I wasn't thinking of it as my solitary mission. Family was complicated, mine more than most, perhaps. Trust, once broken, couldn't be restored overnight. But like the house itself, relationships could be stripped back to their foundations, examined honestly, and rebuilt with patience and care. Tomorrow would bring Olivia with coffee, more hours of meticulous restoration work, and then my parents, seeing my home for the first time since I'd begun transforming it. Small steps toward something new, built on the bones of what came before. I ran my hand along the window frame, feeling the century-old wood solid beneath my fingers. This house had witnessed generations of families with their joys and sorrows, their fractures and reconciliations. Now it was witnessing mine. Outside, the streetlights flickered on as dusk deepened. Inside, I moved through rooms that held both, my past and my future, no longer haunted by betrayal but quietly hopeful about what might be built in its place. The Craftsman on Oak Street was more than the house I'd fought for. It had become the backdrop for a different kind of restoration, the patient, deliberate mending of bonds I'd once believed irreparably broken. And like the home itself, the work would continue, one careful layer at a time. Sunday evening arrived with golden light filtering through newly cleaned windows. I'd spent the morning with Olivia finishing the dining room built-ins, applying a gentle oil finish that brought out the rich grain of the oak. The transformation was remarkable. What had once been buried under layers of dull white paint now glowed with amber warmth, showcasing craftsmanship from a century ago. "You have a gift for this," Olivia had said before leaving, running her fingers along the smooth surface, seeing potential where others see problems. Now I moved through the house, making final preparations for my parents' visit. Fresh flowers from the farmer's market brightened the kitchen counter. The dining table, my grandfather's restored farmhouse piece, was set with mismatched vintage plates I'd collected over the years. Pizza was ordered, wine uncorked to breathe. The doorbell rang precisely at 6. Some things never changed. Dad had always been punctual to a fault. I opened the door to find both parents standing awkwardly on the porch steps, Mom clutching a ceramic pot of bright yellow mums. "Right on time," I said, stepping back to let them in. Mom offered the flowers. "From my garden, like you asked. They're perfect. Come in, see what I've done with the place." Their expressions as they moved through the entryway reminded me of the first time I'd walked through these rooms, that mixture of appreciation and possibility. Mom paused at the living room archway, taking in the original woodwork I'd painstakingly restored, the built-in bookshelves now filled with my collection. "Oh, Emma," she breathed. "It's coming alive." Dad moved more slowly, examining the craftsmanship with an expert eye. "You've kept the original character, but made it feel current. Not easy to do." Their approval shouldn't have mattered after everything that had happened, yet I felt a flicker of pride at their recognition. This was my domain, my vision made tangible, and even they could see its value. "Wait until you see the dining room," I said, leading them through the house. "Olivia helped me finish the built-ins today." Mom's step faltered slightly. "Olivia was here?" "She's been helping with the restoration. Turns out she has a good eye for detail." The dining room drew audible gasps. Afternoon light slanted through leaded glass windows, illuminating the newly restored oak cabinets. My grandfather's table anchored the space, set for dinner with candles waiting to be lit. The yellow mums would complete the picture perfectly. "I can't believe this is the same room we saw when you first looked at the house," Dad said, running a hand along one of the cabinet doors. "The workmanship is extraordinary." "It was always there," I said, "just hidden." Mom arranged her mums in the center of the table, then stood back to admire the effect. "It feels like you, Emma. Strong, authentic." The pizza arrived, breaking the moment of unexpected connection. We settled around the table, the conversation carefully neutral. At first, neighborhood developments, Mom's garden plans, a documentary Dad had recently watched. Slowly, the atmosphere relaxed as we focused on food and small talk, rather than the unresolved tensions lingering beneath the surface. It was Dad who finally broached the subject as we finished the last slices. "We were wrong," he said simply. "About the house. About how we've treated you and Olivia differently all these years. About a lot of things." Mom nodded, setting down her wine glass. "We've been doing some hard thinking since you confronted us. About the patterns we've created in this family. And?" I prompted, not willing to make this easy for them. "And we've realized we put too much pressure on you to be the responsible one," while enabling Olivia's dependence, Dad continued. It wasn't fair to either of you. We thought we were responding to your natural tendencies, Mom added. You were always so capable, even as a little girl, and Olivia seemed to need more guidance, more support. So, you decided I didn't need anything at all? The words came out sharper than I'd intended, old hurts rising to the surface despite my resolve to remain calm. Dad flinched slightly. We thought we were helping you become independent, strong. We were proud of how self-sufficient you were. I didn't want to be self-sufficient at 8 years old, I said quietly. Or 16. Or even 25. I wanted to know my parents had my back, that I could count on you the way Olivia always could. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't see it that way. We thought we were giving you what you needed. What I needed was equal treatment, equal support, equal love. We've always loved you both equally, Dad protested. Love isn't just a feeling, Dad. It's actions. It's showing up. It's tangible support when it matters. I gestured around us. When Olivia wanted something, you made it happen. When I wanted something, even something as important as this house, I had to fight for it alone. Until she decided, she wanted it too. The truth of my words hung in the air between us. Neither of them could deny the pattern that had defined our family dynamics for decades. You're right, Dad finally said, his voice rough with emotion. We failed you, Emma, not just with the house, but throughout your life. And I'm sorry, truly sorry for my part in it. Mom reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. We want to do better, be better, if you'll give us that chance. I looked at these two people who had shaped my life in profound ways, both positive and negative. The father who'd taught me to use tools and value craftsmanship, but never thought to help ease my financial burdens. The mother who'd celebrated my achievements but never recognized my struggles. They weren't villains in my story, just flawed humans who'd made mistakes they were only now beginning to understand. I'd like that, I said finally. But it will take time and effort, real change, not just good intentions. We know, Dad nodded. We're committed to doing the work. After dinner, I gave them a proper tour of the house, showing them projects completed and those still planned. Dad offered advice on replacing the damaged porch railings. Mom suggested painting the upstairs bathroom a soft sea glass green that would complement the vintage tile. Small moments of connection, tentative but genuine. As they prepared to leave, Mom hugged me carefully, as if afraid I might pull away. Thank you for having us, sweetheart. Your home is becoming something special. It already was, I said. I'm just helping it shine again. Dad hesitated on the porch steps, turning back with an uncertain expression. Olivia mentioned you two might be working on the kitchen cabinets next weekend. That's the plan. Why? I thought, if you wouldn't mind, I could help too. I refinished our kitchen cabinets years ago, remember? Might be useful having an extra pair of hands. The offer surprised me, not just the practical help, but the request to be included in something Olivia and I were building together. A different kind of family configuration, formed by choice rather than obligation. Saturday at 9, I said. Bring coffee and donuts. His smile was immediate and genuine. I'll be here. After they left, I wandered through the quiet house, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. The evening hadn't erased years of hurt, but it had created space for something new to grow. Like the house itself, healing would come room by room, project by project, conversation by conversation. The following Saturday dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for the messy business of kitchen cabinet restoration. Olivia arrived first, already dressed in work clothes and bearing a box of fresh pastries from the French bakery downtown. Morning, she said, sailing past me to set her offerings on the counter. I brought sustenance. those cheese Danish you like." "You remembered." She shrugged, a hint of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Of course I remembered. You used to save your allowance to buy them every Saturday morning." It was such a small thing, this acknowledgement of a shared history that wasn't all conflict and competition. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang again. Dad stood on the porch with 3 coffee cups in a carrier and a large toolbox at his feet. "Reporting for duty," he said with a tentative smile. "Hope you like dark roast." The 3 of us crowded into the kitchen, sipping coffee and mapping out our approach to the cabinets. Unlike the dining room built-ins, these were simpler farmhouse-style cabinets, likely added during a 1940s renovation. "We'll need to remove all the doors and hardware first," Dad explained, slipping easily into his element. "Label everything so we know what goes where when we reinstall." "I can handle that," Olivia volunteered. "I'm organized." I raised an eyebrow at this previously undisclosed quality, and she grinned. "What? I can be methodical when I want to be." "Okay, Ms. Methodical. You remove and label. Dad and I will set up sawhorses in the backyard for the stripping process." What could have been awkward instead became surprisingly comfortable as we fell into a natural rhythm of work. Dad showed Olivia how to carefully remove hinges without damaging the wood. I mixed the eco-friendly stripping solution. We talked about the house, the neighborhood, the farmer's market expanding to twice weekly for summer, safe topics that allowed us to circle each other cautiously. By mid-morning, all the cabinet doors were removed and arranged on sawhorses in the backyard. We worked side by side applying the stripping solution, watching as decades of yellowed paint bubbled and lifted. "Remember when we refinished that old dresser for your room?" Dad asked as we scraped gently at the loosened paint. "You must have been about 12. You insisted on doing most of it yourself." I smiled at the memory. "You kept trying to take over. Mom finally made you sit on your hands. You were always so determined to do things your own way. Wonder where I got that from?" He laughed, glancing at me sideways. "Touché. Stubbornness runs in the Davis blood." Olivia looked up from her door panel. "Along with ridiculously high standards, you two used to drive me crazy with your perfectionism," says the woman who just spent 20 minutes making sure her cabinet door labels were perfectly aligned. I teased. "That's different. That's organizational efficiency." We all laughed, and for a moment, it felt like we were building something new, a relationship based on who we were now rather than the roles we'd played for decades. The work continued through the afternoon, scraping, sanding, and prepping the wood for its new finish. Dad taught Olivia how to test if the wood was properly sanded by sprinkling it with water. If it beat it up, more sanding was needed. If it soaked in evenly, the surface was ready. "How do you know all this stuff?" she asked him, genuinely curious. "My father taught me," Dad replied. "And his father taught him. Woodworking skills used to be passed down like family recipes." "Why didn't you teach me?" The question hung in the air, simple but laden with meaning. Dad's hands stilled on the sandpaper. "You never seemed interested," he said finally. "Emma was always in the workshop with me, asking questions, wanting to try things. You were elsewhere. Because you two already had your thing," Olivia said softly. "Your special connection. I felt like an outsider." I watched my sister's face as she spoke, recognizing for the first time how my close relationship with our father had affected her. While I'd envied her for the financial support and easy affection our parents had given her, she'd envied me for the shared interests and respect Dad had shown me. "I never meant to exclude you," Dad said, looking genuinely stricken. "I just followed your lead. You seemed to prefer shopping with your mother, dance classes, social activities." "Because those were the things I could do well," Olivia admitted. "The things where I didn't have to compete with Emma's natural talent." I almost protested that it wasn't talent, but practice. Hours spent watching, learning, trying, failing, and trying again. But I recognized the vulnerability in her admission, the courage it took to voice these feelings. "It's not too late to learn," I said instead. "If you're interested." Olivia smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I am. Turns out I like creating things with my hands. Who knew?" "I'll teach you both," Dad offered. "Everything I know about woodworking, home restoration, all of it, if you want." The moment felt significant, a door opening to a different kind of relationship, one where knowledge and skills were shared freely, where old patterns could be rewritten. We worked until dusk, making remarkable progress on the kitchen cabinets. The doors were stripped and sanded, ready for staining the next day. The frames still attached to the walls were prepped and masked for painting. Tomorrow we would apply the finish that would transform the kitchen from tired and dated to warm and inviting. As we cleaned up, washing stripping solution from our tools and sweeping sawdust from the porch, Mom called Dad's cell phone. "She wants to know if we'd like dinner," he reported after hanging up. "She's made a big pot of that vegetable soup you both used to love as kids." Olivia looked at me, leaving the decision in my hands. This was my home, my sanctuary. The choice of whether to extend this day of tentative reconnection was mine. "Tell her yes," I said after a moment. "But we'll need time to shower and change." "Say 8 o'clock?" Dad nodded, pleased. 8 it is. After they left, I stood in my half-finished kitchen, surveying the day's work. The space was in that intermediate stage of renovation, messy, unsettled, full of potential but not yet realized, rather like the relationships we were cautiously rebuilding. I showered away the day's sawdust and paint residue, thinking about the conversations we'd had while working, the surprising discoveries about how differently we'd all perceived the same family dynamics, the revelations about Olivia's feelings of exclusion, Dad's unconscious favoritism, my own role in the complicated dance of our family relationships. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, the familiar scent of Mom's vegetable soup filled the air. Carrots, leeks, thyme from her garden, and the secret ingredient she'd never revealed despite years of our guessing. Olivia was already there, hair still damp from her shower, helping set the table. "Just like old times," Mom said as we gathered around the dining table. "Family dinner on a Saturday night." Not quite like old times, I thought. The dynamics had shifted, the air between us charged with new awareness. But perhaps that was a good thing. Conversation flowed more easily than I would have expected, centered mostly around the day's work and plans for the next phase of kitchen, renovation. Dad explained the difference between water-based and oil-based stains to Olivia, who listened with genuine interest. Mom described her vision for curtains that would complement the kitchen's new look. "I was thinking," she said hesitantly, "if you wouldn't mind my input, of course. Those kitchen windows would look beautiful with simple linen panels. I could sew them if you'd like." Another olive branch extended, another skill offered, from parent to child. "I'd like that," I said. "Maybe you could teach me how to sew them? I've always wanted to learn." Her face lit up. "Really? I'd love that." "Me too," Olivia chimed in. "I tried to hem pants once and nearly sewed them to the couch." We all laughed, and Mom looked around the table with wonder, as if she couldn't quite believe this moment was happening. My girls, wanting to learn to sew. Who would have thought? "People can surprise you," Dad said quietly, "if you give them the chance." After dinner, as I prepared to leave, Mom pressed containers of leftover soup into my hands. "For your lunch tomorrow, you'll be working hard on those cabinets." "Thanks, Mom." I hesitated, then added, "Would you like to come see the progress tomorrow afternoon? Maybe around 4? We should be finished staining by then." "I'd love that." She hugged me. A real hug this time, not the tentative embrace of last week. Driving home under a canopy of stars, I felt a curious lightness. The house on Oak Street had become more than just my personal sanctuary. It was becoming the backdrop for a family renaissance, a place where old wounds could begin to heal through shared labor and honest conversation. Sunday brought more work, staining the cabinet, doors with Dad, Olivia mastering the technique of applying even coats with the grain. Mom arrived at 4 with a batch of homemade cookies and stayed to help plan the kitchen curtains, measuring windows and sketching design ideas. By sunset, the transformation was taking shape. The lower cabinets gleamed with rich walnut stain, while the upper cabinets and walls were painted a warm, creamy white that brightened the space without feeling stark. Hardware would come next weekend. Vintage brass poles I'd found at an architectural salvage shop that would complement the home's era. "It's going to be beautiful," Mom said as they prepared to leave. "A perfect blend of old and new." "That's the goal," I replied, honoring what came before while making it functional for today. Dad squeezed my shoulder gently. "You have a gift for that, seeing the value in things others might discard." On the porch steps, Olivia lingered after. Our parents had gone to their car. "Same time next Saturday for the hardware installation?" "Absolutely. Though it's a much easier job than what we tackled this weekend." She nodded, gazing out at the front yard where spring flowers were beginning to bloom in beds I'd cleared of weeds. "You know, I've been thinking about what happens after we finish the kitchen. There's still the upstairs bathroom, the back porch, No, I mean with us. This new, whatever it is we're building, I don't want it to end when the renovation projects are done." The vulnerability in her voice touched me. "It doesn't have to." "Good," she said simply, "because I'm kind of enjoying getting to know my sister as an adult, the real you, not the idealized version I resented for so many years." "I'm enjoying it too," I admitted. "Getting to know the real Olivia, not just my spoiled little sister." She made a face. "Still a little spoiled. Working on it, though." After they all left, I walked through my home in the gathering dusk. Each room held evidence of progress, not just in the physical restoration, but in the healing of relationships I'd once thought irreparably damaged. The dining room built-ins that Olivia had helped restore. The kitchen cabinets bearing my father's expertise and patience. The curtain plans reflecting my mother's creativity and desire to contribute. The house on Oak Street had become more than just the property I'd fought for. It had become a canvas for possibility, a neutral ground where a family fractured by years of miscommunication and hurt could begin to rebuild, one project at a time. I settled onto the front porch with a glass of wine, watching as lights came on in neighboring homes. The spring evening was mild, filled with the scent of fresh-cut grass and the distant sound of children playing before bedtime. In the garden, the first shoots of perennials were pushing through soil I'd amended and mulched. Like everything worthwhile, growth took time, patience, and the right conditions. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "How'd it go with the family home invasion? Need rescue?" I smiled, typing back. "Surprisingly good. Family renovation. Project might actually be renovating the family." Her response came quickly. "Miracles do happen. Proud of you for giving them a chance to make amends." Was that what I was doing? Giving my family a chance to make amends? Perhaps. But it felt like more than that. It felt like we were all creating something new together. Something that acknowledged the flaws of our past while building toward a healthier future. Another text arrived, this one from Dad. "Cabinet stain should be dry by morning. First coat of clear sealer tomorrow after work?" I replied, "Perfect. I'll pick up supplies." Such a simple exchange, yet loaded with meaning. My father asking rather than telling, offering help without taking over. Respecting my home, my project, my authority. The porch swing creaked gently as I rocked, surveying my domain in the gathering darkness. the house I'd fought for, the home I was creating. The backdrop for a new chapter not just in my life, but in the life of my family. Some might say I'd gotten more than I bargained for when I fell in love with the craftsman on Oak Street. They'd be right, but not in the way they might think. I'd gained not just a house, but a renewed sense of self-worth, the courage to set boundaries and demand respect, the wisdom to recognize genuine efforts at change, and perhaps most surprisingly, the capacity to forgive without forgetting, to move forward while still honoring the lessons of the past. The house keys in my pocket were more than just metal against my palm. They were tangible proof that standing up for yourself could lead not just to justice, but to healing. That fighting for what you deserve doesn't always end in estrangement, but can sometimes open the door to deeper understanding. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, more opportunities for old patterns to resurface. But tonight, sitting on my porch in the quiet evening, I felt something that had been missing for too long: hope. Not just for the house's continued transformation, but for my family's as well. Like the craftsman itself, we were works in progress, imperfect, bearing the scars of our history, but with good bones and the potential for beauty that only time, care, and honest effort could reveal. 1 year to the day after I'd first stepped foot in the craftsman on Oak Street, I stood in my completely renovated kitchen, preparing for a celebration. The December morning light streamed through windows that now opened smoothly, catching on, the brass hardware of cabinets restored to their original beauty. Outside, a light snow dusted the garden beds I'd spent months reclaiming from years of neglect. "Need help with anything?" Sophia asked, arranging cheese and fruit on a platter. She'd arrived early to help me prepare for the housewarming party, a proper one this time, with friends, neighbors, and yes, family all invited. "I think we're good," I replied, sliding a tray of appetizers into the oven. Wine is chilled, desserts are ready, and the house is finally completely finished. Sophia glanced around the kitchen with its blend of vintage charm and modern functionality. "It's incredible, Em. Even better than you described in those early plans you showed me." "Sometimes reality exceeds expectations," I said, surprising myself with the sentiment. After years of cautious hope and measured dreams, I wasn't used to things turning out better than anticipated. "Speaking of which," Sophia lowered her voice conspiratorially, "how are things with the family? Really? No sugarcoating for my benefit." I considered her question as I arranged napkins in a basket. The past year had brought changes I couldn't have foreseen on that desperate night when I'd appeared sobbing on her doorstep, my dream house seemingly stolen from beneath me. "Good," I said finally. "Not perfect. We still have moments when old patterns try to reassert themselves, but mostly, good. Better than I ever thought possible." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Define good." Dad asks before offering advice now. "Mom treats Olivia and me equally. No more rushing to smooth Olivia's path while expecting me to handle everything alone." And Olivia. I smiled, thinking of my sister's most recent visit. Olivia's becoming someone I genuinely enjoy spending time with. She's finding her own strengths instead of focusing on competing with me. "Miraculous," Sophia declared. "Remind me to buy Helen Morrow a very expensive bottle of wine someday. If she hadn't called you about those loan access attempts, who knows if any of this healing would have happened." I paused, considering this. I think it would have eventually. Maybe in a different way. But the problems in our family were too fundamental to ignore forever. Someone would have finally spoken up. "And that someone would have been you," Sophia said with certainty. "Because you're the one who finally refused to accept less than you deserved." Her words resonated with truth. The fight for this house had been about more than property. It had been about claiming my worth, demanding the respect and consideration I'd earned through years of responsible choices and hard work. In standing up for myself, I'd broken a family pattern that had diminished all of us in different ways. The doorbell chimed, interrupting my reflection. First guests, I said, checking my watch. Right on time. The house filled quickly with neighbors, colleagues, and friends. Beth from down the street arrived with her husband and a housewarming gift, a beautifully illustrated book on craftsman architecture. Michael, my real estate agent turned friend, brought a vintage doorbell plate he'd found at an antique shop that matched my home's period perfectly. Even Helen Morrow made an appearance, her approval evident as she toured the now completed renovation. "You've done this house proud," she told me, accepting a glass of wine. "Not many people would have had the vision to restore rather than replace." "It was worth every minute," I replied. "Every splinter, every paint scrape, every late night. And worth fighting for," she added knowingly. I nodded, grateful for her role in making sure justice prevailed. Absolutely worth fighting for. My parents arrived bearing poinsettias for the front porch and a small wrapped package. Mom embraced, me warmly whispering, "The house looks magical, Emma. Everything you've accomplished here is extraordinary." Dad hugged me next, his approval evident in his expression as he glanced around the entryway. "You've created something special here, kiddo. Something that will outlast all of us." They moved into the living room where the fireplace, the same, one we'd painstakingly restored together, crackled with a cheerful fire. The Christmas tree we'd decorated last weekend glittered in the corner, ornaments from both my childhood and newly acquired vintage pieces blending seamlessly, much like the house itself with its mix of original features and thoughtful updates. Olivia arrived last, windblown and laughing, carrying a large box wrapped in silver paper. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare, and then I couldn't find parking." She set her gift on the designated table, then surveyed the crowded living room. "Wow, full house. People clearly appreciate what you've done here." "They do," I agreed, "though some of them are just here for the free food." She laughed, nudging me with her shoulder, a casual gesture of affection that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "I doubt that. Your house is the talk of the neighborhood, especially after the holiday tour." The holiday home tour had indeed been a turning point, not just for the house, but for our family's public perception. Neighbors who had known us for years witnessed the Davis family working together instead of at cross purposes, supporting Emma's vision rather than undermining it. The shift hadn't gone unnoticed. As the party reached its peak, I found myself standing slightly apart, watching my worlds collide in the most pleasant way. Sophia chatting with Beth about community garden plans, Dad discussing woodworking techniques with Michael, Mom and Olivia serving desserts they'd prepared together, friends from work admiring the tile work in the bathroom, neighbors asking about paint colors and where I'd found the vintage lighting fixtures. The Craftsman on Oak Street, once just a property I'd coveted from afar, had become the heart of a community I was building. Not just of neighbors, but of people who valued what I valued, who saw beauty in preservation rather than replacement, who understood that some things were worth the extra effort to restore rather than discard. "Attention, everyone!" Sophia called, tapping a spoon against her wine glass. The room quieted as all eyes turned toward her. "I'd like to propose a toast to our hostess, Emma Davis, who not only saved this architectural gem from potential destruction, but created a home that embodies everything she is, authentic, beautiful, and built to last." Glasses raised around the room, faces smiling at me with genuine warmth. I felt a flush of emotion rising, unexpected and powerful. "And," Sophia continued, "as Emma's best friend who witnessed every step of this journey, the good, the bad, and the occasionally catastrophic plumbing emergencies, I want to acknowledge something else. This house represents more than just a successful renovation. It represents Emma finally standing up for what she deserves, refusing to settle for less, and showing all of us what's possible when you fight for your dreams." "Hear, hear," called several voices, my father's among them. "To Emma," Sophia concluded, "and to the house on Oak Street, may you both continue to grow more beautiful with time." As glasses clinked and approving murmurs rippled through the crowd, I caught my sister's eye across the room. She raised her glass in a private toast, her expression conveying what words couldn't: recognition of how far we'd come, acknowledgement of the painful path that had brought us here, genuine joy in what we'd built from the wreckage of old patterns. Later, as guests began to depart with hugs and compliments, my parents pulled me aside near the Christmas tree. Dad handed me the small wrapped package they'd brought. "We wanted to give you this privately," Mom explained. "It's not exactly a housewarming gift, more of a recognition." Curious, I unwrapped the package to find a velvet jewelry box. Inside, nestled against dark fabric, lay an antique key on a delicate silver chain. "It was your grandmother's," Dad said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "She wore it to symbolize her independence, her ability to make her own way in the world after your grandfather died. She left it specifically for you," Mom added. "But we held on to it, thinking we'd give it to you when you seemed ready, which was wrong of us. You've been ready for years. We just couldn't see it." I lifted the key, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. "It's beautiful," I said softly. "There's more," Dad continued, producing an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This is the original deed to your grandmother's house, the one she managed to keep and maintain on her own, despite everyone telling her a widow couldn't handle property ownership." I opened the envelope, finding a yellowed document from the 1950s with my grandmother's name clearly listed as sole owner. "I never knew this story." "We should have told you," Mom acknowledged. "Should have celebrated that lineage of strong, independent women instead of trying to make you fit traditional expectations. Your grandmother would have been so proud of how you fought for this house, for your right to create your own legacy." The realization that I'd been unknowingly following in my grandmother's footsteps, fighting against those who underestimated me, claiming my place as a woman who could build and maintain something of lasting value, moved me deeply. This house on Oak Street wasn't just mine. It was part of a heritage I hadn't known I carried. "Thank you," I managed through the emotion tightening my throat. "For sharing this with me now. For recognizing what it means." Dad nodded, seeming to understand that this moment represented more than just a gift exchange. It was an acknowledgement from my parents that they truly saw me, not as the responsible eldest daughter who didn't need support, but as a woman continuing a family legacy of independence and determination. As the evening wound down, only my closest circle remained: Sophia, my parents, Olivia, and Michael, who had become something of an honorary family member through his steadfast support during the house battle. We gathered in the living room, relaxed in the afterglow of a successful celebration, the fire casting a warm glow over the scene. "I have news," Olivia announced suddenly. "I didn't want to say anything earlier and steal Emma's spotlight, but I've decided to go back to school for interior design." All eyes turned to her in surprise. Olivia, who had drifted from job to job, interest to interest, never committing to any particular path, now spoke with unexpected certainty. "Working on this house with Emma showed me what I've been missing: a creative outlet that combines practicality with beauty, something that creates lasting value." She smiled sheepishly. "Turns out I'm not completely hopeless at technical skills when I actually apply myself." "That's wonderful news," Mom said, reaching to squeeze Olivia's hand. "You've shown real talent with the projects here." "You have," I agreed, genuinely pleased for her. "That tile work in the bathroom was professional quality, and your eye for color and texture is exceptional." Dad cleared his throat, clearly moved by this development. "I'm proud of you, Olivia, taking this step, finding your path." The simple words, "I'm proud of you," had once been so rare in our family, especially from our father. Now they came more freely, offered not as reward for conforming to expectations, but as recognition of authentic growth. "I have my sister to thank," Olivia said, meeting my eyes directly. "Emma gave me the chance to discover this about myself, even after I tried to take something precious from her. That's a kind of generosity I'm still learning to understand." "It wasn't entirely selfless," I admitted. "I needed the help with the renovation." "No, you didn't," Olivia countered. "You would have figured it out alone if necessary. You always do. But you let me be part of it anyway. Let all of us be part of it. And that changed everything." Her assessment was accurate. I could have completed the restoration on my own, hired professionals when needed, maintained the boundaries that felt safest after my family's betrayal. Instead, I'd taken a risk, opening my home and, by extension, my heart to the possibility of reconciliation. Not forgetting the hurt, but choosing to build something new alongside it. "The house deserved the best," I said simply. "That meant drawing on all our strengths." "Classic Emma," Sophia laughed, "making it about the house instead of admitting you might have actually wanted your family involved." I threw a pillow at her, which she caught easily. "Fine. Maybe I wanted you all here. Maybe I discovered that restoration works better as a community effort, both for houses and for relationships." As the conversation continued, turning to plans for the new year and projects yet to be tackled, I slipped away to the kitchen for a moment of quiet reflection. Standing at the sink, looking out at my backyard where spring would bring new gardens. To plant, I was struck by how completely my life had transformed in a single year. The Craftsman on Oak Street had become more than just the home I'd longed for. It had become the catalyst for profound change, in my relationship with my family, in my sense of self-worth, in my understanding of what it meant to fight for what mattered. The house had forced all of us to confront patterns that had diminished, us individually and collectively, to recognize hard truths about how we had treated each other, to make deliberate choices about the kind of family we wanted to be moving forward. Michael found me there, leaning against the doorframe with a thoughtful expression. "Penny for your thoughts," I smiled. "Just reflecting on how differently things turned out than I expected when I first called you about houses in this neighborhood. When you told me you wanted something with good bones that needed a little TLC," he recalled, "I remember thinking you had no idea what you were getting into. Did I surprise you?" "Completely. Most first-time homebuyers run screaming from the kind of restoration work you've tackled here." He gestured to the kitchen with its carefully preserved character and thoughtful updates. "You saw the potential beneath the problems. Not everyone has that vision." "I had good teachers," I said, thinking of my grandfather who had taught me to value craftsmanship, my father who had shown me how to work with my hands, my mother whose attention to detail influenced my own. And I had something to prove, I suppose. To your family? To myself, mostly. That I could create something lasting. Something beautiful. I traced the grain of the wooden countertop I'd refinished myself. Something that would still be here long after I'm gone. Michael nodded, understanding. "That's the magic of these old houses. They carry the imprint of everyone who's cared for them through the years. Now your mark is here too, in every restored window, every saved piece of original woodwork, every thoughtful update that respects what came before." From the living room came the sound of laughter, my father telling one of his renovation disaster stories, the kind that seemed funnier in retrospect than they had been in the moment. My mother's voice chimed in with corrections to his exaggerated version of events. Sophia and Olivia contributed their commentary, the conversation flowing with the easy rhythm of people who had found comfortable space with one another. "You know what I'm most proud of?" I said to Michael. "It's not the house itself, though I do love how it's turned out. It's what happened because of the house." "Your family," he supplied. "Yes. The house forced us to confront issues we'd been avoiding for decades. My parents' tendency to expect more from me while requiring less from Olivia. My sister's resentment and insecurity. my own reluctance to ask for help or admit vulnerability. I smiled ruefully. It took nearly losing something I'd worked so hard for to make me fight, not just for the house, but for the respect I deserved. That real estate agent, Helen Morrow, she told me once that houses have a way of ending up with the owners they're meant for, Michael mused. I thought it was just something agents say to make clients feel better when they lose a bidding war. But in your case, I think she was right. This house needed someone who would see its value, fight for its integrity. And you needed a place worth fighting for, I finished. A tangible reminder that I deserve good things, that my work and dreams have value. We rejoined the others in the living room, where the conversation had turned to holiday plans. For the first time in years, we would be celebrating Christmas as a family, not out of obligation, but from genuine desire to be together. Emma, we were just discussing Christmas dinner, Mom said as I settled back into my armchair. Would you like to host it here? The dining room is certainly spacious enough, and it would be lovely to celebrate in your home. The offer represented a significant shift, my mother willingly ceding her traditional role as holiday hostess, acknowledging my home as a gathering place worthy of important celebrations. I'd like that, I replied, though you'll have to share. Your recipe for that cranberry relish no one can quite replicate. I'll do better than that, she promised. I'll come early and we'll make it together. It's time you had the family recipes formally passed down. Another boundary gently crossed. Another traditional hierarchy softened. No longer the daughter, perpetually seen as needing to learn from her mother, but a woman recognized as capable of carrying forward family traditions in her own way. As midnight approached, my guests prepared to leave, gathering coats and exchanging final hugs. Olivia lingered, helping to collect glasses and plates despite my assurances that cleanup could wait until morning. I wanted a moment alone, she explained as we loaded the dishwasher, to give you something without an audience. From her purse, she withdrew a small tissue-wrapped package and handed it to me. Inside was a delicate ornament, a miniature craftsman house, hand-painted in colors that matched my home exactly, right down to the blue-gray exterior and crisp white trim. I had it custom-made, Olivia explained, from photos of your house, so you'll always remember this first Christmas, here and everything that led up to it. The detail was exquisite. Tiny windows reflecting the ornament's surroundings, miniature wreaths adorning the doors, even a suggestion of warm light glowing from within. It captured not just the physical appearance of my home, but its essence, welcoming, solid, authentically itself. It's perfect, I said, genuinely touched by her thoughtfulness. I wanted you to have a symbol of what you've built here, not just the house itself, but the home it's become. For you, for all of us, in a way. I hung the ornament on the Christmas idea tree, where it caught the light and seemed to glow from within. Thank you, Liv. Not just for this, but for everything over the past year, for being willing to change, to try something different between us. Thank you for giving me the chance, she replied simply, for not writing me off completely when you had every reason to. After the last guest departed and I'd tidied the worst of the party aftermath, I made a final circuit of my home, checking locks, turning off lights, adjusting the thermostat for the night. In each room, evidence of the day's celebration remained. Cards and gifts on the entry table, dessert plates waiting to be washed, a forgotten scarf draped over a chair. But there were other, more permanent markers of the year's transformation. The dining room built-ins that Olivia and I had painstakingly restored together. The fireplace Dad had helped rebuild brick by brick. The kitchen curtains Mom had sewn, while teaching me the skills she'd practiced for decades. Everywhere I looked, the house bore the imprint not just of my vision, but of collaborative effort, a physical manifestation of healed relationships and new patterns of interaction. Upstairs in my bedroom, I changed into pajamas and moved to the window seat I'd created in the dormer window. From this vantage point, I could see the neighborhood draped in snow, Christmas lights twinkling on nearby homes, the occasional car, passing slowly on the quiet street. My street, my community. I touched the antique key that now hung around my neck, thinking of my grandmother and her determination to maintain her independence, to create security for herself in a time when women were expected to depend on male protection. How strange and wonderful that her legacy had found its way to me at precisely the moment I needed that connection most. The house on Oak Street stood solid and welcoming around me, its century-old beams and carefully preserved character a testament to the value of patience, of seeing worth where others saw only problems to be demolished. In fighting for this house, I had discovered strengths I hadn't known I possessed. Not just practical skills of renovation and restoration, but the courage to demand respect, to set boundaries, to insist on being valued for my contributions. A year ago, I'd stood in an empty room, heartbroken and betrayed, wondering how my own family could conspire to take away something I had worked so hard to earn. Tonight, I sat in a home filled with evidence of healing and growth, surrounded by both the tangible results of physical renovation and the less visible but equally important restoration of family bonds. The Craftsman on Oak Street had become exactly what I'd hoped for when I first saw it: a sanctuary, a canvas for creativity, a place that reflected my values and priorities. But it had also become something I never could have anticipated: the neutral ground where a family fractured by years of unhealthy patterns could begin again, learning to relate to each other with honesty, respect, and genuine appreciation for each person's unique strengths. As I prepared for sleep in a home that was finally, completely mine, both legally and spiritually, I found myself filled with gratitude, not just for the victory I'd won in claiming this house, but for the unexpected gifts that had come through that struggle. The discovery that I was capable of setting boundaries and standing firm when they were tested. The realization that relationships, like houses, could be restored when all parties committed to honest assessment of damage and careful rebuilding of foundations. The knowledge that some things, both architectural treasures and family bonds, were worth fighting to preserve, worth the patient labor of restoration. The Craftsman on Oak Street had claimed me as surely as I had claimed it, becoming not just the home I'd dreamed of, but the catalyst for transformation I hadn't known I needed. In these walls, I had found not just shelter, but strength, not just individual achievement, but communal connection. And in the year to come, both the house and I would continue to evolve, to grow more fully into what we were meant to be all along: authentic, resilient, and built to weather whatever storms might come our way. Outside, snow began to fall again, dusting the rooftops and gardens with fresh white. Inside, I slept peacefully in the house I had fought for and won, not just against others who would have taken it from me, but against my own doubts about what I deserved. The Craftsman on Oak Street had become more than just my dream house. It had become the home where dreams of all kinds could take root and flourish. Dreams of beauty preserved, of relationships healed, of a future built on the solid foundation, of knowing your own worth and refusing to settle for less. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.